During the reign of Crassus III, the Parthian Empire and the Roman Republic were the world's dominant powers. After Roman commander Pompey defeated the Seleucids, Rome and Parthia shared a border. However, another Roman commander, Crassus, sought to expand Roman territory and revive the Seleucid government. He captured Parthian-held cities and then launched an expedition directly against the Arsacids, igniting the war between the two empires. During the reign of Crassus III, the two dominant powers in the world were the Parthian Empire and the Roman Republic. These powerful entities faced common threats. One of them was the Kingdom of Armenia, and the other was a government known as the Kingdom of Pontus. Crassus III decided to collaborate with the Roman Republic to confront these common threats. It was agreed that Crassus III and the Parthian forces would move towards Armenia, while, on the other side, the Roman Republic would destroy the Pontic kingdom. This plan unfolded successfully, and Crassus III managed to bring the Armenian king to his knees, eliminating Armenia as a threat to the Parthian government. Meanwhile, the Roman Republic also successfully invaded the Pontic region, annexing it. However, what fate befell the Seleucid government in this scenario? Up to this point, we still had the Seleucid government, a once powerful empire from ancient times. It was established after Alexander the Great by one of his generals, Seleucus. However, over the years, this government weakened. During the reign of Crassus III, the Seleucid territory was limited to the region of Syria. However, various powers had influence over even this Syrian region, including the Armenian king. The Roman Republic had a highly experienced commander named Pompey, a formidable warrior. Pompey decided to bring an end to the Seleucid rule once and for all, incorporating the Syrian region into the Roman Republic's dominion. At that time, the Parthian government could not militarily intervene in Syria. In 63 BCE, Pompey launched a powerful campaign into the Syrian region, engaged with Seleucid forces, and defeated them. In the same year, the Seleucid government fell into the hands of the Roman commander, marking its permanent end. This development led to the Roman Republic and the Parthian Empire becoming neighbors and sharing a border. Initially, it seemed that they had overcome common threats and could be friendly neighbors. However, the Roman Republic soon engaged in numerous actions, making the border a volatile one, with the scent of war in the air. But what befell Crassus III in this situation? Crassus III was a courageous king who understood the threats. In the year 60 BCE, he was killed by his two sons, named Mithridates IV of Parthia and Orodes II. Following the death of Crassus III, Mithridates IV of Parthia ascended to the throne. After becoming king, he faced challenges in the Armenian region. He decided to lead an expedition to subdue Armenia once and for all. As Mithridates IV of Parthia left the capital and engaged in war with Armenia, Orodes II seized the throne and declared himself the king of the Parthians. Mithridates' supporters went to Armenia and delivered the news to him. Upon hearing the news, Mithridates became very angry, abandoned the Armenian campaign halfway, and returned to the capital. During this time, Orodes II had gathered supporters around himself. Mithridates IV of Parthia confronted his brother's supporters and defeated them. Orodes II saw no choice but to flee the capital. Mithridates IV of Parthia regained the throne, but he was fearful that the same misfortune might befall him again. Mithridates IV of Parthia decided to take revenge on anyone who had betrayed him or had any direct or indirect involvement with his brother. He initiated the execution of these individuals, many of whom were close relatives and kin of the Arsacid dynasty. Day by day, the number of executions increased, including many foreigners. However, the bloodshed did not bother Mithridates IV of Parthia. Concerned about this situation, the Mahestan assembly convened and decided to dethrone Mithridates IV of Parthia and replace him with his brother, Orodes II, in the hope of reducing the bloodshed. To prevent future internal conflicts, the governance of the Media region was entrusted to Mithridates IV of Parthia. However, he rejected all these decisions, considering them as insults. Mithridates IV of Parthia engaged in another military conflict with his brother, but this time he suffered defeat. Mithridates, now a king without the previous popularity, left the capital. After a while, he realized that the Parthian territory was not safe for him. Mithridates IV of Parthia sought refuge in Syria, which was under Roman control. Despite the Roman presence, Mithridates IV of Parthia decided to betray Iran and allied himself with the Romans. He planned to launch an attack against the Parthians, aiming to reclaim the throne and power. He stayed in Syria for a while, engaging in negotiations with Roman commanders. However, these negotiations did not yield favorable results. Leaving Syria, Mithridates IV of Parthia headed to Babylon. There, Arab tribal warriors were present, and Mithridates IV of Parthia had his own military forces. He formed an alliance with the Arab tribes, creating a combined army. With this united force, he decided to attack the Parthians. Orodes II was aware of this development and mobilized his own forces to confront his brother. In the year 55 BCE, the two brothers engaged in a bloody war. During this conflict, Mithridates IV of Parthia suffered defeat once again. This time, Orodes II showed no mercy to his elder brother and ordered his execution and became the 13th official king of the Parthians. This war marked the first intradynastic conflict in the Parthian Empire. During the reigns of Mithridates IV of Parthia and Orodes II, three prominent Roman leaders named Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus held sway over Roman affairs. This Roman government is remembered for the rule of the first triumvirate. Despite having formed an alliance to rule together, these three figures harbored rivalries beneath the surface. Caesar governed the Gaul region, known today as France. Pompey ruled over Spain, and Crassus, who considered himself equal to the other two leaders, was appointed by the Roman Senate to oversee Syria and command the army stationed there. Tigranes the Great, the Armenian, continued his subversive activities in the Caucasus region, attempting various schemes. However, all the military expeditions in that area were met with resolute responses from the Parthian forces, resulting in most of them being defeated. The Armenian king persisted in this pattern until the end of his life, and ultimately passed away in seclusion. During this period, the Armenian government had become significantly weakened. While it's true that the Armenian government couldn't mount effective resistance against the Parthians, an event occurred that made Armenia a hazardous region. When Armenia failed to break free from Parthian control, it became not an independent entity but rather an ally of the Romans. In a sense, Armenia had to be considered within the Roman territory. Armenia was willing to let Roman forces use its territory to attack the Parthians. In one of his significant moves, Mithridates IV of Parthia changed the capital of the Parthians from the city of 100 Gates to the city of Ctesiphon, bringing it closer to the Roman territories. This relocation allowed them to keep a closer eye on the Romans and respond promptly if Roman forces made a move. On the other side, Crassus had different ambitions from the other generals. He sought to expand his territory and revive the ancient Seleucid government. Crassus decided to conquer the surrounding cities. Additionally, he aimed to annex the Parthian government entirely into his domain and then proceed to India, conquering it and reviving the era of Alexander. Crassus ordered his forces to leave Syria and head towards the cities of the Seleucid region, which were within the Parthian domain. He instructed them to gather information about the Parthian government and, if there was no resistance, take control of those areas and settle their forces there. Crassus himself accompanied the Roman forces on this expedition. They moved towards these regions, capturing several cities. After a while, Crassus and his forces returned to Syria. This time, their intention was to strike at the core of the Parthian forces and completely conquer their government. Crassus held a meeting with the dignitaries of the Roman Republic in Syria. However, the actions of the Roman forces at the borders of the Parthians drew the attention of Orodes II. Orodes II quickly understood what was happening and promptly sent a threatening letter to Crassus. The letter read, "You have entered the region and territory of Parthia and occupied our cities. The Parthian king is willing, out of his old age and kindness, to show mercy to you and allow the Romans settled in the cities of Iran to peacefully leave these areas. Otherwise, you are in conflict with the might of the Parthians." Crassus arrogantly responded, saying, "I will announce my intentions in Seleucia." Following this response, the elderly Iranian ambassador named Viscus chuckled and presented the palm of his hand, saying, "If a hair grows from the palm of my hand, you will see Seleucia." The Iranian envoys took Crassus's response, returned to the Iranian court, and informed Orodes II that it seems there is no way forward, and these Romans intend to advance towards our territory and conquer Iran. Orodes II was informed that there was no solution other than preparing his forces for war, indicating that the war was inevitable. On the other side, Crassus was determined to launch an attack. Crassus had well-organized forces, but he had no information about the political situation or military power of the Parthians. He sent a number of spies toward Ctesiphon and the headquarters of the Parthians. After a few days, these spies returned with news that was not favorable to Crassus. They reported that the Parthian forces were numerous and seemed more powerful, they fought in an organized manner, conducted regular training, and possessed modern and lethal weapons. Crassus was horrified by this information, and the news spread among the Roman forces, instilling fear in them as well. Despite the fear, Crassus was determined to proceed with the war. To maintain the morale of his forces, he delivered passionate and motivational speeches, trying to boost their spirits in anticipation of the upcoming battle. When the king of Armenia learned that Crassus intended to attack the territory of the Parthians, he sent an emissary to Crassus, praising him and expressing his willingness to offer the entire land of Armenia to the Roman forces. The emissary informed Crassus that Armenia was a fertile region with numerous mountains, and in the upcoming battle, they could effectively eliminate the Parthian forces. Crassus, however, showed little inclination to seek assistance from the king of Armenia. He coldly thanked the emissary and stated his intention to launch an invasion from the Babylonian region into the Iranian territory, as many of his distinguished commanders were stationed in that area. Crassus proceeded towards the Euphrates River, near the region of Zugma, which is now part of the Gaziantep province in Turkey. He ordered the construction of a bridge to facilitate their passage. Once the bridge was completed, Roman forces crossed it, approaching the Iranian border. They convened a session in a strategic area to determine the approach for the impending attack on Iran. Meanwhile, a messenger brought news to Crassus. It was reported that an Arab prince named Ariamnes had entered the court and sought an audience with Crassus. Ariamnes was a well-known figure for the Romans. He was an Arab noble and a Roman ally, showing a great fondness for Rome. Additionally, he had assisted Pompey in the Roman campaign in Syria and earned the trust of the Romans. However, in this context, Ariamnes had become closer to the government of the Parthians and, in a way, had a penetrative role within the Parthian influence. The Romans decided to bring Ariamnes into their council. When Ariamnes entered, he presented military suggestions to Crassus. He advised Crassus to move through the plains and the Sabulus region, as the Parthian forces were weaker there. By entering through the plains, the route would be shorter. On the other hand, the Parthians had fewer forces in the western region, with most of their military strength concentrated in the eastern part of their territory. If Crassus moved swiftly and battled with the western Parthians, he could break their front lines and potentially seize their capital. Crassus listened to Ariamnes' suggestions and agreed with him. The Roman forces entered the plains, but as they advanced, they encountered difficulties in the marshy terrain. The movement of the Roman forces was slow, and they struggled with the natural conditions. Their military equipment became stuck in the mud, hindering their progress. The situation worsened day by day, and some Roman commanders began to doubt Ariamnes, suspecting that he might have intentionally led them into this quagmire. During this time, when Crassus and his forces were stuck in the quagmire and unable to move, a messenger from Armenia arrived with news that further agitated Crassus. Crassus learned that Armenia was no longer a safe haven and that Armenia could not assist the Roman forces. The king of Armenia had urged Crassus to abandon the current region and come towards Armenia so that they could at least save Armenia by supporting each other. The news had reached them that Orodes II intended to invade Armenia with his powerful forces. When Crassus heard this news, he felt that the king of Armenia was betraying him and that it might be a trap for the Roman forces. Crassus, not in written form but orally this time, told the messenger, "Go back to where you came from and tell your king that when I escape from this quagmire, I will come there, kill the king, and take revenge for these betrayals." The progress was still impossible, and Cassius, Crassus' advisor and commander, confronted the Arab sheikh, pulling him aside. Cassius asked him how he had brought Crassus to these marshy and desert terrains and what kind of magic he had used. In response, the Arab sheikh said they would soon find relief from these waterless and barren terrains. He then went to the Roman soldiers and shouted, "Do you think this is Italy, where you can set foot anywhere and find springs and rivers? Know that this is the region of Assyria and Arabia, and these are dry deserts." The Arab sheikh managed to calm the Roman forces to some extent. Once these forces were pacified, Ariamnes decided to leave the Romans and move towards the territory of the Parthians. He had a good excuse, claiming that his horse was a swift horse, and with permission, he could go towards the Parthian territory. He argued that being a lone individual, no one would doubt him, and he could gather valuable information about them. Afterward, he would attempt to infiltrate among them and disrupt their army. He suggested that the Romans could advance, and by the time they reached a good region, they could engage with their forces and defeat them. These proposals were intriguing, and Crassus and others accepted them. Ariamnes left the Roman forces, with no intention of joining them. Instead, Ariamnes became an ally of the Parthians. He knew one thing very well: Roman forces were weaker compared to the Parthian forces. For this reason, he chose the more powerful faction. Ariamnes left that region, and no further news was heard about him. 2 or 3 days passed, and Crassus called upon a few of his spies. He instructed them to leave the area and head towards the nearest cities of the Parthians to observe the situation and determine if there was any resistance. 10 to 12 Roman soldiers set out towards the headquarters of the Parthians. After a few days, 2 or 3 of them returned in a state of panic. They approached Crassus and informed him that everything was beyond what he had envisioned. The Parthian forces were more formidable than he thought. They were organized and advancing aggressively towards them, ready for war. Crassus became terrified, realizing that the war would not be as straightforward as he had anticipated. He ordered his troops to be on high alert, dividing his forces into left and right wings. He entrusted the command of these wings to his son and his general, positioning himself at the heart of the army. The Roman army decided not to stay in one place and continued its advance. Shortly after marching through the waterless and grassless desert, the Roman soldiers reached the side of a river named Balissus. This river was located in the mountainous regions of Assyria and the Euphrates. Although it did not have abundant water, the Roman soldiers were delighted to find it. Many of the leaders and warlords suggested setting up camp right there and spending the night, but Crassus, eager to win the battle and his son's thirst for military action, commanded them to march forward. Crassus ordered his 42,000-strong army to eat while standing in their ranks without leaving. During this time, the border between Iran and Rome smelled of impending conflict, and Crassus believed that the Romans should initiate the war. He instructed his troops to continue moving towards the borders of Iran. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like it, and share it with your friends. Do not hesitate to provide your view regarding this video by putting your comments below. Your comments would help us to improve our work, and also, they help us to take your views into account for the future topics that we select. Furthermore, you can subscribe to our channel to become aware of our new videos.